Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here. Because of the recent videos I have produced, are all me being opinionated and cynical, I have decided to show that I still love Warhammer 40k by producing a video praising parts that I love. The Night Lords. As I have said before, they are my favorite legion. Konrad Curze is my favorite Primarch. They are peak grimdark and I love them. What makes Konrad Curze a grimdark character is not only his great tragedy aspect, but also his moral absolutism, uncompromising nature, and fatalistic outlook on life. Despite his brutal methods, Konrad knows he's right. He knows he's doing it for justice, to instill order, because that is what he was created to do. He saw that to bring order to Nostromo, he had to instill fear on criminals and civilians alike. That they only fear consequences and not threats. That only with a strict tyranny based off fear can Nostromo be brought to subjugation. He applied all he learned there to the Great Crusade, his legion having the lowest body count as well, and also the lowest collateral damage, and a 100% compliance rate due to how effective he and his legion's terror tactics were. To the point some planets surrendered to the Imperium before a shot was even fired, had they heard that the Night Lords were coming for them. And his legion, the Night Lords, on the other hand, especially after the death of their Primarch, is unique amongst all other factions of Warhammer 40k. Not because they are edgy sadists who brutally mutilate their enemies, because they are brutally honest about the fact that they are evil, unlike the other factions in 40k. Even the Dark Eldar, who still have the justification of, we have to do this otherwise she who thirsts will take our souls, the Night Lords are, yes, we committed genocide. They deserved it and will do it again. It is this brutal honesty is what makes the Night Lords unique. Because Warhammer 40k is a setting that not only glorifies being the bad guy, but it also rationalizes evil. Whereas the other factions do what they do to survive, the Night Lords see the hypocrisy in the actions of others, and to absolve themselves of this hypocrisy, they simply do not deny that they are evil, even if it does not absolve them of their sins, for lack of a better word. It only absolves them of their hypocrisy. These are the basic reasons for why the Night Lords can only work in Warhammer 40k. However, I will still give you two examples from different settings for why Konrad Curze and the Night Lords simply wouldn't work in any other setting. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but a good thing. It shows that they are unique to this setting, and only in Warhammer 40k can such a tale be told. And I find that to be fascinating. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that Konrad Curze was introduced to the Marvel Universe as this original character. Konrad Curze is uncompromising and morally absolutist. Because it's either his way or the highway, he would be alienated amongst heroes and villains alike. The heroes would see his brutal methods as nothing short of open terrorism. With his fatalism, extreme measures, and uncompromising nature, he would alienate even the Punisher. Although the Punisher uses lethal force, even he has restraint over who he kills and how he kills. Konrad Curze does not differentiate between any criminal. He would brutally mutilate someone who stole a loaf of bread to feed his family, just like he would brutally mutilate a serial murderer. The Punisher would simply find this to be grossly misguided at best, and that's being generous, and sadism at worst. He would find Konrad's methods to be ultimately too extreme, even if on paper he would find his cause to be just. Konrad Curze would likely at first see Punisher as a kindred spirit, if we are being generous. Or a more likely option, because he is paranoid, he would only see the Punisher as another criminal trying to impose his own sense of justice. Curze wouldn't find the stance hypocritical because he would know he is right. He was born with an extensive knowledge of the law and what to do and what not to punish. Nostromo only made him push this knowledge and apply punishment to the extreme. Konrad Curze would see Spider-Man as everything he despises. A naive, loud-mouthed, annoying pest who did not do what is necessary to impose order. Due to Spider-Man's unwillingness to take lives, not only that, Spider-Man's easygoing approach and trash-talking his enemies, this would drive Konrad Curze up a wall. And the Avengers would simply see him as a terrorist and a threat to freedom and the very fabric of society they wish to protect. A tyrant who seeks to establish his own order of fear. Same with the X-Men. Albeit, Konrad would be far more ruthless against the X-Men, not only because they are a high-level threat, because also they are mutants, suffer not the mutant to live. Because unlike Vulcan, Konrad Curze is honest about the fact that he slaughters the enemy's men indiscriminately. Even tyrant villains like Doctor Doom and Magneto would see him as a high-level threat. Doctor Doom would see Konrad Curze as an uncontrollable force who doesn't have what it takes to use power, while the Nighthawker in return would see Doom as a savage with too much power who doesn't use it responsibly to establish order for a just society. Magneto, on the other hand, would see Konrad Curze as a threat to his mutant superiority-based order. Rightfully so, as Curze would see Magneto as a mutant who would seek to deny mankind from its right to spread throughout the stars. If, again, being very generous, the only character who could approach Konrad is Thanos. If, again, if he thought he could sway him to his cause. Konrad, however, would be immediately hostile towards the Mad Titan, as he would see him as an alien who threatens to kill half of humanity over his warped, misguided cause. Due to Marvel tackling themes of hope, redemption, cooperation, and using power responsibly, Konrad Curze would simply appear one-dimensional in the context of the Marvel Universe due to his mental instability, fatalistic as well as absolutist and uncompromising worldview. Konrad Curze wouldn't work as a villain even in the darkest corners of the DC Universe either. The Justice League would see him as an existential threat and a delusional monster. Mainly, three of them in particular. Wonder Woman would see Konrad as a dishonorable brute who uses dirty fighting and extreme violence to impose his twisted view of justice. Konrad Curze would call her a coward for believing in a notion such as honor, and not using her powers to impose order upon the society she seeks to protect. Superman, on the other hand, would have none of Curze's philosophy. To one another, they would be the very thing they hate the most. Superman has a more optimistic view of humanity, that humans only want to live and let live, that only bad apples seem to be prevalent, that there can be a better tomorrow, even in a flawed world. Konrad, in contrast, has a much more cynical, yet not misanthropic view of humanity, believing humans are prone to greed, corruption, and are ultimately self-serving, and only through a strict order maintained by fear can humanity achieve greatness both in prosperity and in a moral sense. They would be immediately hostile towards one another. And as OPS 40k is, I am not sure if Konrad can beat Superman. I'm not saying he can't, I just don't know. The real question is, though, can he beat Goku? The third member, which is the member that Konrad would feel the closest to, is the Dark Knight himself, Batman. Which I think he would at least try to talk because of it. Konrad would see Batman as naive at best and a weak man who is no better than the criminals he fights at worst. Batman would see Konrad as a sadistic tyrant with his own twisted sense of justice. Konrad would call Batman weak for refusing to kill and would go out of his way to show that he's no better than the villains he fights. He would ask Batman how many Jokers it would take for him to realize that his refusal to kill only begets more innocent suffering, that it is inaction which is equally as morally reprehensible as committing a crime, that his efforts of reform from within are futile, that to truly save Gotham, he would not only need to kill people like the Joker, but the petty criminals, the mayor of Gotham City, the politicians, the GCPD, all of them. No exceptions. Batman simply would not do this. He would see this not as justice, but a scorched earth approach to establish a tyranny built off fear. That is what Batman's main problem with Konrad would be, aside from his brutal, indiscriminate, and borderline sadistic methods. That what he suggests is a tyranny. Batman believes that justice must be rehabilitatory and reformative. Konrad, on the other hand, sees justice as a way to punish and stop crime altogether by whatever means necessary. Even villains like Lex Luthor, Darkseid, and Ra's al Ghul would shun Konrad Curze. Lex Luthor would see Konrad as an existential threat to not just his vision of uplifting humanity, but also towards himself. Konrad would see Luthor as a man with too much wealth and power in his hands trying to play God. Darkseid, on the other hand, would see Konrad as a threat to his own plans of establishing a tyranny. And Konrad's view would be similar, seeing Darkseid as an alien tyrant who wishes to enslave humanity, which Konrad seeks to protect. Even Ra's al Ghul, although at first would be sympathetic to Konrad's methods, he would ultimately see him as a threat to his vision of a better world. Konrad would once again see Ra's as a man with too much power in his hands wanting to play God, that his utopian dream is just that, a dream, that only through fear can order be maintained. Purging the undesirables is not enough for the Night Haunter. With that, I want to conclude this section by saying that due to DC's themes of redemption, even in the darkest of times, struggling and hoping for a better world, Konrad Curze would simply look like a one-dimensional villain in this context. Now let's move on to his sons. So, for example, let's put the Night Lords first into the Mass Effect universe as a terrorist organization and see how they could possibly fare in it. They would not. Well, narratively at least. They would immediately set their eyes on determinist systems to raid and terrorize. The Night Lords would see the Citadel as fools who does not do what is required to bring determinist systems to subjugation. They would wreak havoc there and brutally subjugate planets, which would rally the entire system against them. Determinist systems would see the Night Lords as tyrants, even worse than the Citadel, who wants to oppress them and take away their freedom through fear. The Night Lords would recognize that Cerberus are tyrants invading even before the elusive man would be indoctrinated. They would see through their best interests of humanity with cynicism, thinking they only seek to become tyrants the moment they get into power. And even Cerberus would not want to associate with them. If the Night Lords were in Mass Effect, whether as their superhuman selves put into the galaxy or as a terrorist organization of mortal men, determinist systems would unite to declare all-out war on them, and the Citadel would aid determinist systems by sending every Spectre available. Besides, given the tone of Mass Effect, even with many people misunderstanding, hint hint, they simply also wouldn't fit with the tone of Mass Effect, especially with the Reapers coming. The Night Lords would simply divide the galaxy more. And if Mass Effect is, well, too bright for you to accept, what about one of the darkest Star Wars media ever produced? Knights of the Old Republic 2. Let's just take the Night Lords and put them there. Even in KOTOR 2, where the galaxy is dying and the whole point of the story is to show that it is forever doomed to be fought over by Force users, the Night Lords still wouldn't fit. Their presence would be even more brash and idiotic than the Eternal Empire's was in SWTOR. The Night Lords would hate both the Jedi and the Sith. The Night Lords would hate the Sith because once they learn of the dark side, they would parallel it to Chaos corruption. The Ruinous powers are distrusted amongst the 8th Legion. Those who do use marks use it as a means to an end, while those who fall to Chaos are outright shunned. Their distrust of Chaos also makes them a pariah even amongst the traitor legions. Although the Night Lords would respect the Sith's mentality of might makes right, they ultimately would see them as brutes no different than those crazed by the powers of the Dark Gods. They would actively see scaring the Sith as a challenge for themselves. And the Jedi? The Night Lords would see them as apathetic, inactive, self-righteous charlatans who think they have a monopoly on morality and ethics, seeing them as tyrants. The Jedi, however, would hate the Night Lords equally, if not more than the Sith, even in KOTOR 2, if they knew who he was. They would essentially say that Count Dooku was right about the Jedi. The Jedi would hate the Night Lords as much, if not more than the Sith, seeing them as the greater threats, which could lead to the remnants of the Jedi and the Sith Triumvirate teaming up to defeat the greater evil, which are the Night Lords. Just like in SWTOR, when the Republic and the Empire teamed up against the totally not OC Do Not Steal faction that is totally not a ripoff of the Fire Nation from Avatar The Last Airbender. Whereas the Mandalorians, the Night Lords would view them the same way they would view the Space Wolves. Savages who think they are noble due to their concepts of honor, seeing them as nothing more than overglorified criminals and thugs in armor. The Mandalorians, however, would see them as honest brutes who do not fight unless all the odds are on their side. So, these are the reasons why I think the Night Lords can only work in Warhammer 40k, and why this is a good thing. They should be inclusive to Warhammer 40k. Otherwise, Warhammer 40k isn't what Warhammer 40k is. Because Night Lords are peak grimdark. And if they were in other universes, they would just be one-dimensional villains that half of the 40k community thinks they are. So, I love Warhammer 40k, and I love stuff like this. So, this video was again just me showing that I can be something else other than whiny and cynical. And as always, never forget, never forgive.